up, and welcome back to 24 Minutes of A24, the podcast that takes a look at the A24 library 24 minutes at a time. I am Ethan Simi.
And I'm Ben Lawhorn. This week on the pod, we are betting it all as we make our way down to New Orleans and talk about Mississippi Grind.
Down on his luck and facing financial hardship, Gary teams up with younger, charismatic poker player Curtis in an attempt to change his luck. The two set off on a road trip through the South with visions of winning back what has been lost. Just a note that this pod is being recorded and produced during the SAG-AFTRA and WGA strikes that are currently happening in 2023. Without the hard work of those writers and actors, we wouldn't have movies like this to talk about or to watch or to enjoy or anything. So please support those strikes where you can. And shout out to A24 for paying their writers and actors, which is a pretty cool thing to do. We have a really special guest joining us today on the podcast. Tyler C. Whitemore of the Reeltok podcast and a prominent member of the Film Talk community over on TikTok is joining us for the very first time. Tyler, welcome to the pod. How's it going, man?
It's going great. Happy to be here. I'm glad you're still shouting out, the SAG strikes and WGA strikes. And like you said, A24 is one that's, it's good to go. Like they're doing everything by the book, doing everything right. But even though you guys are obviously an A24 focused podcast, still bringing light to that's great. But yeah, it's going well. I think this has been kind of in the works for a while. We've had some conflicting dates where we try to do some A24 coverage on this pod together, and finally it all lined up for Mississippi Grind. So I'm excited to be here and chat.
Yeah, it's gonna be sick. I'm very excited. I think we've wanted to cover Mississippi Grind for a while, so I'm glad that we kind of worked it into the schedule. Obviously, spoilers are ahead for Mississippi Grind. So if you haven't seen it and you don't want to be spoiled, just put a pause on the pod, go watch it, and come back when you have seen it. I'm pretty excited to talk about it. Ben, last week we did an Uncut Gems watch along. Pretty heavy on the gambling front and the stress front. Right back to it this week with Mississippi Grind. I realized that a little bit too late. I was like, wow, we're going back to back on the gambling movies here.
Yeah, we are. A little less anxiety inducing, I think, with this one. Still there a little bit, and a lot less talk about coming. But other than that, I was excited to get back into it with this movie.
Hey, here's the thing, and Tyler, this is great that you're on here because I can get your input. Ben, this is a story that I told you privately, and I feel like the more people I can share it with, the better. Obviously, a very big topic of the Uncut Gems watch along pod was what Uncut Gems tattoo am I going to get? The Furby is pretty standard. I can't really get a portrait of Howie. That's a little bit too much. Where's the sweet spot? I suggested to my wife that I could just get holy shit, I'm going to come somewhere on my body. And she obviously said she would need to go to therapy if that indeed happened, which I totally understand. But Ben, your idea was I just keep throwing the craziest things against the wall. So she eventually has to back down and say you can get Howie tattooed on your ass. That's totally normal compared to getting other things. Tyler, where do you stand on that? And do you have any input on an Uncut Gems tat for me? Cause I'm dying here, man.
Yeah, it's tough. I like your idea of just throwing out the most outlandish ideas, so then you can kind of meet somewhere in the middle. It's a good bargaining technique. Right. Yeah, I've struggled with the same thing. I've been wanting a La La Land tattoo forever, but it's what do you get? Sebs, or do you get I don't know, it's the most basic stuff that everyone's getting, and I feel like you're kind of in the same boat. You're with the Furby, although I haven't seen that one nearly as much. I think that'd be dope. You have obviously the diamond from the beginning of the movie. You have the chain that he gives KG. You could just get Kevin Garnett tattooed on you, a Celtics logo, and then people would be like, "Oh, you're a huge NBA fan." But, no, actually, I'm an Uncut Gems fan. Yeah, you got some stuff to play with there for sure.
Yeah,
I should just get "Don't lean on the glass, KG." That should be the quote that I get on there.
Don't lean on the glass. Yeah, exactly.
Definitely. Okay, cool. Let's talk about Mississippi Grind. We don't really have any A24 housekeeping this week. Of course, in light of the strikes, A24 has got a lot of stuff coming out. They also delayed a couple of things. But I feel like there's not a whole lot of notable news this week to cover. So Mississippi Grind, this movie stars Ben Mendelsohn and Ryan Reynolds. Tyler, the first thing that I said to you in our group chat was I think this might change my outlook on Ryan Reynolds. And you went the other way and you said possibly could change the outlook on someone for Ben Mendelsohn here. So are you pro Ryan Reynolds since you kind of swerved on that take?
So I wouldn't say I'm in love with Ryan Reynolds. I think he's a good actor. I'm happy when he's in a movie, but the reason I said I didn't think it would sway your mind is because I felt he plays that similar charismatic, one-liners, jokey kind of guy that he always is. So it's like if you're not liking Ryan Reynolds' shtick, I don't think this movie's going to turn you. But Ben Mendelsohn, I feel like is a guy who a lot of people just know him from like the Star Wars projects, the Marvel projects. Like he's been in a lot of big blockbusters and kind of like crappy roles.
Yeah.
Whereas like I've seen him in the TV show Bloodline, where I've loved him. I've always loved him in this. But every time I mention that Ben Mendelsohn's just one of like the greatest actors working, everyone's like, oh, he's kind of crap in like Captain Marvel or crap in like, or he's just kind of whatever in Rogue One or whatever. I'm just like, he's in so much other great projects. So I'm hoping like people who watch Mississippi Grind will realize like he's not just, you know, a blockbuster cut and dry villain. He actually can have some range in his acting when it comes to dramatic work.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, this Reynolds one, to me, it's still like a light version of the Reynolds that we get now, where he's just like playing Deadpool all the time, you know, so I can like stomach him a little bit better in this movie. But I'm totally with you on Mendelsohn. I'm always so happy to see him. This is like one of my favorite performances of his. So I was stoked to revisit this movie and just like spend more time with Ben for sure.
Yeah.
Mendelsohn's got range in this movie, which I was really surprised. So you were totally right, Tyler. Absolutely. I'm pretty cold on Ryan Reynolds, like as a whole. I just like, unfortunately Deadpool's great, but like other than that, I went to a Regal mystery movie one time and it was Spirited, and I was just like, this is the worst maybe movie I've ever seen in my life. So you know, I just feel like he's shown up in my life in opportune times. So
well, you know, fun fact on that is, do you know who was actually cast in his role, in the lead role of this movie, before scheduling conflicts changed it last second?
No.
It would have been so much more interesting.
Jake Gyllenhaal was actually the lead in this movie,
boy,
and was pulled out for Ryan Reynolds at the last minute. Yeah, would have been.
Oh, that would have been fascinating. Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because like alternate universe, I mean the movie's different, but I feel like that could have been cool, but also like I'm really swayed because it's Jake. So
sure.
Yeah, of course I'm gonna be a fan of that.
But that also begs the question, as I mean, I'm dipping into the other podcast for a sec, over 3 films. Anytime we bring up Jake, we bring up our Gyllenhaal Hall of Fame. And would this movie have been better if Maggie Gyllenhaal was the star with Ben Mendelsohn? And I argue that it would have been really fucking cool to see Maggie Gyllenhaal and Ben Mendelsohn just fucking going down Mississippi together. I would have loved it. It would have been great.
Yeah, would have been something.
Would have been something.
Would have been a movie,
for
sure. This movie was directed by Ryan Fleck and Anna Boden. So doing a little bit of research, I realized this is essentially a directorial duo who basically bonded over their love of Robert Altman, which was pretty cool in college. Ryan Fleck directed Half Nelson. Speaking of like guys that I love, Ryan Gosling in Half Nelson. He also directed Captain Marvel. You know, the Ben Mendelsohn connection there as well. And so I thought that was pretty interesting that they directed Mississippi Grind, and it kind of at least feels like an outlier from like the rest of their filmography that I've seen. Before I get into any of my other interesting things that I want to talk about, I do think it's important to cover our general thoughts on the movie, where we stand, if we like it or if we didn't. So Tyler, you've seen this movie before. You rewatched it for the pod. I take it you're a fan of Mississippi Grind.
I'm a big fan of Mississippi Grind. Listen, I've sports bet before. I've normal gambled before. I'm a big fan of going to Vegas or like a local casino and just like, you know, having a good night there. So I can definitely relate to movies like this. But to me, this is just like the most realistic depiction of gambling addiction to me. Like, I feel like when you're making, that's why I wonder like the director's background here, like you said, it's kind of an outlier in their filmography. I didn't look into like if there's a personal connection to them, but I feel like when it comes to gambling movies, a lot of people go down the route of, you know, something that's going to be shock value, like 21, where someone's just getting like beat up in the back room of a club,
Sick,
or even Uncut
movie,
Gems, like a crazy ending. Like, I feel like when people go for gambling movies, they try and go for like the most outrageous, crazy gambling bets in the world, where people are just doing the most outlandish stuff. Whereas this, like, they do some crazy stuff, but it felt so real of just a guy, you know, like stealing from people, just really trying to get anything he can get together to just go out and gamble. And he finds Ryan Reynolds, who's like his luck charm. And I just felt like it just felt so real. You're always chasing that high. You're not necessarily doing something crazy like in some of the gambling movies, but this just felt so raw and real. And that's why the connection really hit for me, because I haven't gone to anywhere down this rabbit hole of like gambling, but I've been there before, and I've seen people. You go into a casino and you see some people that you're like, man, like they're just, you know, basically half asleep at a slot machine, just hitting play over and over and over. And you're like, you can see how it can really ruin people's lives. And I feel like this movie really hones in on that in such an interesting way, in a really dramatic way, which is why I would wonder if the directors have some family history of something with gambling addiction, because it definitely went for a really raw and real take on it.
Ben, I know you're in Vegas quite a lot. Are you a gambling addict? Did this hit home for you, Ben?
Yeah, I'm in recovery right now. No, I'm a big fan of roulette. Like that's one of my favorite games, but I also don't love being around people, so I just like the electronic roulette where I can just be on my own and I don't have to worry about reaching over people. It's a very, I don't know, there's a lot of people around.
You don't think that's rigged? Like, you don't think the electronic roulette is a lot dicier than the human one?
I mean, I'll take it over the claustrophobia of being around all the other people, to be honest. So I'll do it. But yeah, no, I mean, everything Tyler said is right. Like, this is like just a great depiction of gambling and addiction in general. Just seeing some of the things that they do when they just need to literally feel something. And even if that feeling is like someone else's hand on their face, you know, as they get punched, you know, like that was one of my favorite lines. The whole movie is like, oh man, you just see the other guy's hand, you know, it's like, yeah, dude, like that was a pretty gnarly, but I was stoked to watch this again. It had been a very long time since I had seen it. And yeah, I just think it's a great movie.
Yeah. Since this was the first time that I saw it, I think initially I did go into it, like Tyler, like you said, with that idea of like, okay, this is a gambling movie. It does have very much of like that Uncut Gems energy where it's just like pretty stressed, like not on the same level, but at least in the same vein of like, this is pretty stressful and he's doing anything he can to do what he needs to do. And so I think I was really blown away by the fact that the movie feels low stakes, but like high stakes enough to make it impactful. Like pretty much the only time besides the final big win at the end, the only time we see Jerry win is like he wins only like $7,000. Like it's not even that big of a deal. It's like low stakes, and that really helps like accentuate the fact that he is doing anything that he needs to do. Like this is a pure and true addiction that he has. I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was really good. The Ryan Reynolds light comment is really on point, like LITE. We got like a lessened version of him, which I really enjoyed. And it did make me think, like, unfortunately, you know, there's those actors sometimes where it's just like, man, they got chewed up by the Hollywood machine. Like, I wonder what they would have been. Like Mark Ruffalo, excellent example. Like Spotlight, electric. And then he's in every single MCU project, maybe forever. Of course, he has Poor Things coming out and other movies, but like 10, 12 years of his career was dedicated to the Hulk and the MCU, and like imagine what could have been. I feel like that with Ryan Reynolds. Of course, Deadpool is very special and like makes the Hollywood comic book wheels turn. But I think there's something that is really like a gleaning light of that can be unlocked for Ryan Reynolds, like in this kind of a role. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I had a really good time. This is the 26th movie A24 ever released, and this actually came out right before Room with Brie Larson, which I think is interesting, an awards contender there. I'm personally a fan of gambling movies in general. Tyler, you mentioned 21. I love 21. Like I grew up on that movie, and I have not revisited it in my adulthood. I did just upgrade from the DVD that I have in my catalog to a Blu-ray, so I care enough to
Nice.
to like upgrade that. Maybe it hasn't aged well, but I like that movie. Are you a fan, Tyler, of gambling movies in general? Do you have a favorite, maybe?
Oh gosh, do I have a favorite? I haven't rewatched a ton of them in so long, but I'm a fan of 21. That's also similar. Like that's just something that just seemed to always be on just like the cable TV show channels,
Right.
like ABC Family or something growing up, that I would just watch every time it was on. Still, I rewatched I think a couple years ago and still did like it. I think like The Gambler with Mark Wahlberg, I can't remember if I was high on that or not. Uncut Gems is obviously great. I'm a big fan of that, even though I know it's a pretty divisive movie, but I think amongst film talk circles, it's a pretty highly acclaimed movie.
Yep.
But Mississippi Grind's up there. Like I just love the realistic depiction of it, since I am like someone who does delve into gambling. So getting like a raw and real look at it, as opposed to something that feels almost so far-fetched that it doesn't feel like it could ever happen to you, can sometimes disconnect you. It makes a fun movie experience, but like if you're looking for like something that's a real depiction of it, it can sometimes be like, oh, that's like, I mean, I would never be dropping, hundreds of thousands of dollars on like a Celtics game and doing all this crazy stuff like Adam Sandler. Right. So yeah, I think Mississippi Grind's up there for maybe one of my favorites, if not my favorite gambling movie.
You wouldn't make a 6-way parlay with Garnett to win the tip for your first one?
Oh, I'm sure I would, but I'd probably put like $5 on it, not 20,000.
Yeah, it's nuts. Yeah, I mean, I love gambling movies. This is another reason I was stoked to watch this. One that's like new to me is The Color of Money. I mean, I really I love that movie. Same with like The Hustler, the kind of the prequel to it. It's fun to watch those. Growing up playing billiards like with my grandpa and stuff. So that kind of like gambling stuff, I'm way into it. I have an absolute like favorite, but we'll talk about that in the A1 acts. But I'm here for all the tension that these gambling movies give us.
I did think of the gambling scene in The Big Short where they explain how the housing market works and basically use like Selena Gomez and Richard Thalen to like on the gambling floor, which I really liked, which doesn't count as a gambling movie, but it takes place on the casino floor, and I think that's close enough.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a very important question, and I need to know from you guys. So we get the names of 4 either race dogs or race horses, which like love a movie that structures itself around like, hey, we got to get to the dog race by 1 p.m. I think that's very good. Excellent stuff. And pretty much ends with like a horse race, an absolute heartbreak. So these are the 4 names, and I want to know what your personal favorite is, because I feel like it'll tell a lot about what your gambling habits might be, or just your taste in animal names. Okay, the first one we got was Dynamic Rainbow. Of course, rainbow, good luck charm, this type of kind of naming convention and like theme really heavy in this movie, and I really liked that it kind of kept coming back up, and I thought that was a really good connection with them that stayed through the entire movie. Roland Roosevelt, never bet on a handicap president, I guess.
President,
Toto's Revenge, again, staying in line with like Wizard of Oz and rainbows. Or Mississippi Grind, which like, very Leo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time moment where you're just like, I get it. It's a twofer. Like we're doing the Mississippi Grind. We're going down. And also this is a horse that knocked Jerry, down to the pavement. Ben, out of these 4, what is your favorite? And if you're feeling up to it, I mean, feel free to rank, but I got to know your favorite.
I mean, I love a movie reference, so I'd go with Toto's Revenge. I think that's the one that I would take. I think that's just kind of funny in general. I don't know I would expect it to do well, but I'm just like, hey, I like that name. I'm going to go with that. So Toto's Revenge would be my number 1 spot.
So you're literally Jerry in this situation. We're just like, it's Toto. It's got to be our horse.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Yeah,
you're going to lose, Ben. I hate to break it to you. You had to end this way. You're going to lose.
It's all good. It's the journey, right? It's the journey.
Right. Tyler, what about you?
If I was looking at a sports or a horse betting sheet and trying to pick a winner here, something about Dynamic Rainbow just has a buzz to it. It just rolls off the tongue. I feel like Roland Roosevelt's a little too try hard with the alliteration with the back-to-back R's. It seems like it was a low effort name. Mississippi Grind is great, but sounds like a grinder, like someone who has to really work for its wins, whereas Dynamic Rainbow sounds like someone who's just slick like butter running to the finish line. So Dynamic Rainbow is my horse. I'm putting my money on.
Nice.
That's good. I would go the other way on the Mississippi Grind name. I do feel like it gives off that energy, but I also feel like if I'm picking a horse to win, I want a grinder. I want a guy that's born in the slop, raised in the slop, and knows how to win and grind it out. And I feel like if I'm betting on it and destiny has brought me to this moment, that might be the moment for Mississippi Grind to take the dub. So I like Mississippi Grind. I'm proud of us. We all picked different names. That's incredible. Fantastic. Okay. Very important final question before we do True Cinema, before we walk through the movie here. I'm curious, is Jerry a bad guy? Because he's obviously a gambling addict, down on his luck. He does have a daughter. He is caught by his ex-wife trying to steal money from her. Ben, you mentioned like the punching scene just to feel something that kind of goes both ways for both of the characters. And just this like absolute just core need to bet on stuff. And even if it's heads and tails on a coin, or if whoever walks out of the bathroom next has glasses, like that level of betting. So I'm curious, like your takes, Tyler, do you think Jerry's a bad guy, or is he a fine guy that just got caught in a bad situation?
I would lean towards the latter personally. We don't see a ton of his life before this movie begins, and we don't really see much of what happens to him after this movie. I mean, we know he had a wife in a previous part of his life and a kid, but we don't really know too much about what his life was like before he got into gambling. I would say he's just someone who got, wrapped up in it. Like, I do think, I mean, I see people going both ways too. So I'm not just going to be steadfast in that take, but I think addiction is truly an illness.
Mhm.
We see it in terms of his gambling. He has to bet on everything, like you were saying, but also like every time he's in the car, all he's going to listen to is how to read poker
Yeah.
signs. And at this point, he could probably recite the entire tape back to front, but something about him, he has something in the back of his mind. He's like, maybe this time I'll pick up something different. I'll get another edge here. And
Mhm.
it is just truly something you can see just attacking his brain and every asset of his life. So we don't really know too much about his life before this, if he was a great person or not, but looking at the house his wife was in and then the kid, it seemed like it was something that wasn't, super run down or terrible. So it seemed like he had a great life, and it seemed like he just fell down this path and the addiction got to him and he wasn't able to get help. So I wouldn't say he's a bad guy from what I've seen. I just think he's someone who's dealing with the mental illness here and just needs treatment.
Yeah, I agree with that. He's his own worst enemy,
Mhm.
basically. I think is what it boils down to. He's just got this form of addiction that has kind of ruined his life, as we've seen. So I don't know that I'd like label him as a bad guy, but yeah, he's definitely the antagonist of his own story, unfortunately. So it's interesting throughout the movie you're like empathetic and you're like, I get, he just needs a little bit more money. I get why he's like trying to steal from his wife, but then you're also like, man, that sucks though to be his wife and just know like he's not going to the bathroom. Like I have to walk back there and like stop him from doing this. So yeah, I don't know if he's a bad dude, but he's definitely just like he's got a bad rap, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think he is a good guy that just got caught in that like cycle of addiction, because that final scene we do see him buy back his car
Mhm.
and put that picture of his daughter up there. I would hope, at least the way that I understood it, is like he's headed to Little Rock to try to make amends and try to
Yeah.
to prove like I have money, I can do things now. And I really do think gambling was his way of coping with that like really tough idea. And he mentions it a couple times in the movie of like, I have money problems, like I have financial issues. And like I think that's like how he saw gambling, as a savior to that problem. So I mentioned like the low stakes, the fact that he does win at the end, and that's enough to like at least momentarily like snap him out of that idea and that fog, that gambling fog that's over him, is really telling. So I do think he's like at his core is a really good guy that just got really roped up. And obviously the snippet of his life that we do see is pretty much rock bottom for him, is what we can assume, because he's in pretty bad, and things get a lot worse before they get a lot better. Okay, let's walk through the movie here for True Cinema. The first one I have on the list here is Jerry and Curtis basically meeting and drinking at the bar, and they're both they're just gamblers. Like I think the first time we see Curtis, he's playing darts and like betting people, and I love that they met over the bourbon, and that like that name of the bourbon is really prominent throughout the movie.
Mhm.
And I think they really do have a pretty good energy and a pretty good chemistry that goes back and forth with them. They're really codependent on each other for their needs. And you can kind of just tell, like the first time they go to the bar together, you're like, these degenerates are gonna get up to no good. Like these guys are gonna get into some really, really bad shit. Ben, did you enjoy the first meeting with them?
Yeah, I mean, I liked, the opening at the card table too, when, Mendelsohn later is like, I couldn't get a read on you. He's like, oh, that's just because I don't care about winning. Like
Yeah.
I like that a lot, because I was like, yeah, I guess you wouldn't have a tell if you weren't nervous about whether you're going to win this hand or not. And we learn a lot about both those characters just in that exchange right there. So then to see them later on, with Curtis playing darts and then the whole Woodford thing, yeah, I don't know. It's a great meeting, and like you said, you just know immediately, like, oh, these kind of feel like two peas in a pod here that found each other. Um, this can't be good overall. This looks
Yeah.
like trouble, but yeah, no, I thought it was great.
Tyler, any thoughts the first time you meet him? I gotta be honest, when Ryan Reynolds was like, my name's Curtis, I was like, that name does not fit you at all, to be honest.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Bad
this is
name.
a fake name. Yeah,
Yeah, I can feel that on the whole Curtis not being a name that suits him aspect. But yeah, I really enjoyed rewatching this movie because I feel like you're just able to pull so much more on rewatch. And I just love that the Woodford bourbon and gambling in general are kind of like the great equalizers of man in terms of
Mm,
Ryan Reynolds' character is very charismatic. He can do well with any ladies. He's seemingly better off in life, obviously, than Ben Mendelsohn's character. Whereas, so he kind of gambles just for fun. He does well. He pretty much wins every time. Whereas Ben Mendelsohn loses all the time. He's trying to gamble to save his life. He couldn't get a woman if his life depended on it. He's kind of just a loser. But what do kind of working class people and high class people have in common? Having a stiff drink at the end of the day. They both show up in casinos. One people there for luxury and having fun, like Ryan Reynolds. Ben Mendelsohn there because he's just down on his luck, trying desperately to make money back. So I really think like the whole gambling and the whole Woodford bourbon is just like kind of the great equalizer between the two, and the thing that links the two together, because obviously, as we see, their personalities couldn't be more different, but they're linked together by this bond over Woodford bourbon and their bond over going to the casino every single day.
I gotta say, pretty good bit when the waitress comes back and is like, we didn't have Woodford, and Ryan Reynolds is like, I'm not paying for his because I said it was Woodford and it's not. And Ben Mendelsohn has a mini heart attack. He's like, what the fuck is going on with this kind of guy? I did like that. Next one on the list, Jerry getting stabbed in the parking lot. I assume it's very real. I mean, the guy was like, I see you guys are trying to bet $1,000 pool games. Like, I know you've got cash. I know you have something here. And then he just gets stabbed. And the fact that Ben Mendelsohn was like, you forgot your knife, and like hucks the knife was really funny. Also, like, really key moment in sympathizing with Jerry, where you're just like, damn, like this guy was having a ball with Curtis and having a good time, and he just gets stabbed because, you're just being a little loose with like your money talk around the wrong kind of people. But I'm glad that the stab didn't turn into anything extra. And, it did last throughout the whole movie, which I things like that bug the heck out of me when it's like this guy gets stabbed and then like 2 days later we just like never see it again, never talk about it again. So it was key, which is really, really good. Tyler, did you fear for Jerry at all in that moment? I guess maybe the first time you watched it, did you think like things could get really, really bad after this? Because it didn't get so bad.
Yeah, I definitely did on first watch, because I was surprised on first watch that then like after he gets stabbed, he's like, and when he's telling Curtis about it, he's like, yeah, I knew that guy. He hangs around the same poker halls as me. So that probably maybe led Jerry to not be as scared, because he was maybe hoping like, oh, this guy knows me. He probably won't kill me. He'll just hurt me. But I think Jerry's just an opportunist. I think the second he got stabbed, it hurt him. But I think 2 seconds later, he was like, this is perfect for tomorrow when I meet with the person I owe money to be like, look, I actually have an issue that's preventing me from being like, he robbed me. I have proof of it. So I think just the way he is, like, he was probably like, oh, that hurt, threw the knife, made a joke, and then immediately was like, oh, this is just perfect for what I need right now.
Yeah, 100%. Like, he definitely was like, okay, cool, I can use this tomorrow. This will help me out. And I was like, that's insane. But yeah, he probably thought about that on the drive home. It's like, all right, yeah, I can use this to my advantage. This, like, I remember it happening, but having just finished watching Scream 6, where Ghostface like stabs people in the stomach and then like lifts up, I just kept waiting for that. It's like, oh my god, he's gonna like totally gut him. So I had to like separate that. Like, this is not Ghostface. Like, I don't have to worry about that right now. This is like whatever. But I just love that he also doesn't go to get it checked out. He just like puts a little bandage over it, lets it get completely soaked in blood. He's like, it's fine, and like, let's go on our trip. So I wasn't necessarily scared for his life, but I was like, dude, if your instant like thought is like, oh, I know how I can use this to my advantage, like that's a bummer.
That's a bad beat, as his debt collector would say. What's the rub on the debt collector situation here? So we have the woman that he meets with in the restaurant, essentially, that has a daughter, totally normal life, we can assume. She's trying to collect a debt from him and doesn't even take his $80, and because she wants the whole thing. And then her boss is Tim, that is threatening to kill Jerry's cat. And I'm pretty like, based on that picture, I'm guarantee you Tim just murdered the fuck out of that cat, because he looks like a bad dude. He looks like a very bad guy. I wonder, just out of imagining, like, how long do we think Jerry's been in bad with these people? How long has Tim been after him? Because it does have that Uncut Gems feeling where it's like it's been mounting, and like we're getting to the release of like something's got to give, because if now she's putting Tim on his path, obviously this hasn't happened before. I would like to know more about that realm. I think that would have been fun to get a little bit more background. But Ben, did you do any fanfic for where he's at in this hierarchy of debt collectors.
I kind of feel like, I mean, same with Uncut Gems, where like these are relationships that have gone on for years, you know, and like there are times where he's owed the money for like 3 months, but then somehow gets some money, pays them off, they're good. And then 6 months later, he owes him more money, you know, and I think it's just like, this is like the straw that broke camel's back kind of thing. It's like, no, dude, like we're done. I'm not going to give you any more time. This doesn't feel like this is the first time that it's happened with this guy. Obviously, I mean, I could be wrong. It's just my read on the situation. But it's like, no, if they know each other well enough, they're like, she's taking calls from her daughter and they're just having chats, you know, and she's like, Jerry, come on, man. Like, give me like, we need the money. It's like, oh, they have a dynamic here that is longer than, you know, just a few weeks for sure.
Tyler, do you think they have the means to find Jerry after this? Like next day, he wins almost $500,000 and he's gonna go on with his life. Are they gonna try and hunt him down? Like, is Tim gonna try and GPS track this guy and take his money back, or is Jerry home free?
Yeah, that's a good question to kind of ponder on. I'm sure they're able to track him down. I'm sure because I'm sure they have some sort of tracker on him somehow, and B, because I'm sure they're connected with everyone within the gambling industry.
Right.
With a win that big, they would probably hear about it. But yeah, like Ben was just mentioning, like the relationship seems like it's there, because when he initially sits down to talk with her, but before he reveals the stab wound, like she kind of humors him for a bit and talks, and it sounds like they have some sort of a working relationship. So you kind of get the idea he probably hasn't just been owing money this whole time. It was probably back and forth. Like he probably owed money, then he paid it back, and he's shown in the past that he can have good credit. But this time it seems like it's really slipping out of control here, because like we said, this is the first time it seems like Tim gets unleashed onto him. But yeah, I don't know. Just the vibe I got from her meeting with him, Dorothy, or not Dorothy. What was her name? The debt collector lady.
Yeah,
Was it
Alfred
Dorothy?
Woodard. I don't know her character name, but yeah.
But yeah, so her meeting with them just seems so friendship like at first. So I wouldn't think like it's something super serious, or it has always been. But yeah, it would be interesting. I'm sure they can track him down somehow, but it kind of gives me the vibe that they would probably just take what they're owed and maybe a little more off the top, but probably not the point where he's been so bad to them that they're going to take everything and just rob him blind from everything he won.
Yeah. Mississippi Grind 2, The Hunt. That's what's coming up. That's the next one. Jerry's first big win, like I mentioned, it's $7,000 at a poker tournament on the boat. This is kind of like the beginning of the Mississippi Grind. This is right after he proposes to Curtis to basically back him and be his guy, with the end goal of getting down to New Orleans and buying into this house game that's $25,000. I loved that we adventured to that, but like Curtis says in the movie, the destination is the journey, and that like never materializes. And I thought that was a really good way to divert expectations, because I thought it was going to be very formulaic of like, okay, we're going to start winning, things are going to be going good, we're going to get to the final game, something crazy will happen, you know, we'll go Goodfellas style and shoot Spider, like something crazy is going to go down, right? And it didn't happen that way. And I thought that was pretty smart way to fold that in and utilize that. I felt good for Jerry for a minute. I was like, our guy is doing it. He's on top. We can do this. This can be a reality and we can win. And this kind of comes with a lot of emotional beats that take place with Curtis and his girlfriend as well. And you kind of learn Curtis has probably been in this for a while as well, and has gotten conned and duped by other people that have been liars and thieves and other things like that. So, I like this moment. I will fold in the moment that Jerry has with Vanessa while he's playing the piano, and they kind of tell each other something about themselves that is absolutely not required or asked by the other person, but it is this really sweet release from Jerry to just tell somebody that he just met, he doesn't really know at all, I have money problems, and he just feels better after that. So I felt like in this moment, things were looking really up for Jerry. Tyler, did you have any connection to these scenes, and did you hope like this would have continued for Jerry?
Yeah, it was really nice to see him and Vanessa clearly getting along and establishing some rapport, because it was kind of an awkward situation he was thrust into, where Curtis and his lady were obviously kind of getting together and had something there. So it's kind of just left Jerry to be stuck with Vanessa, but ended up, they kind of hit it off. And I feel like with the whole hook, line, and sinker metaphor, like saying people have, like, I feel like this point was like the sinker moment. Like, I feel like the hook was when they initially met and he's like, this guy's so charismatic. The line was, oh, I'm flipping a coin over and over. I'm rolling dice. This guy just can't lose. And then I feel like this one with the first big win, kind of getting some relationships settled. This is when I think Jerry, that switch turned in his brain. He's like, okay, I'm fully all in. Like he was able to finally address the problems because I feel like he was for the first time realizing like, hey, there might be an answer here. Like I finally made some money. If I can keep this rolling, might finally be able to solve all my issues. So I think he had a enlightened moment here on that boat after that big first win and meeting with Vanessa and having kind of that moment of reprieve that he kind of felt like things finally were starting to go in the right direction for him.
Yeah, I mean, beautiful moment, with him playing the piano and stuff like that. But I have to ask, Ethan, did you recognize Vanessa?
So I totally did, and I don't know where I recognize her from. Can you enlighten me?
She is the babysitter in Crazy Stupid Love. That is in love with Steve Carell, right?
Yes, totally.
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
I had to look it up. I was like, how do I recognize this person? It's like, oh, of course, the Gosling movie. Ethan's going to know this right away. So
I totally knew that I recognized her from somewhere, and I was trying to place her. And then I even went through her IMDb, and I guess I must have missed Crazy Stupid Love because like a lot of her recent stuff, I was just like, there's no way.
Yeah.
I would have called her, but a very noticeable face, obviously.
Yeah, it's like her third credit ever. So yeah, super early. But yeah, I don't know. I can't like articulate anything any better than Tyler did. Like, I mean, it's great scenes. One thing I really enjoyed about this movie, again, that Tyler mentioned, just how realistic it is. Like we're kind of with them during the highs, but also during the lows, and we see how quickly the lows come, and just like the feeling of that high when you win. It's like, oh, I'm invisible now. And then also it's like, you've lost everything. It's like, oh shit. Yeah, this really happened so quickly. So that's one thing I think this movie does really well. But this is like a nice moment with Vanessa. It's just like, it feels like he's able to be his most sincere and genuine self. It's like, I'm just going to lay it out, like, I'm bad with money. This is it, whatever. So super touching scene. I don't know how we haven't really talked about her yet, but Sienna Miller, awesome. Like she's really good in this movie too, and a great dynamic with Reynolds for sure.
Two things I want to mention about this. Number one, really elite to be like, don't make fun of me for my magic trick and then bust out a kitten. That was pretty sweet. Right? Very impressive job. If that happened in front of me, I would be thoroughly entertained and I would react the same way that Jerry does. Second, the kitten, I thought was a really sweet, kind of like minute moment that did a really good job of visually displaying like the fragility that like Jerry holds with life and with like small like breakable things. I think his reaction to that cat establishes like he is a good guy. He's just completely overtaken by this gambling addiction, and he wants to experience those feelings, like this very sweet little kitten. Obviously, he's a cat guy. He has a cat at home, so he has some personal connection there. But I think it also spoke really well to his daughter, and like he longs for that really personal, fragile connection with things, and he doesn't get that in his day-to-day life, obviously. Next on the list, Jerry meeting with Dorothy, his ex-wife, and getting caught stealing money. I thought it was great how Curtis just thought like, he's going to smooth it over with his ex-wife and things are going to be good and maybe she'll join us for the rest of the trip and like, well, things will be great. And, obviously, Ben, you mentioned like Dorothy can't even trust Jerry to go to the bathroom. When I first saw this and he asks, the way he asks is so fucking weird, by the way. He's like, may I please use the restroom on my way out, please? And it's like, okay, weirdo. Yeah, sure. You can use the bathroom. So I knew walking down the hall, I was like, what's going to happen? Something crazy is going to go down. Like, is he going to like vandalize her bathroom? Is he going to take it out on her? What's going to happen? Didn't think he was going to steal money. I guess I just like don't think that way initially. But the fact that he got caught and then does like the open hands thing was brutal. It was really, really hard to watch. And I was just like, Jerry, like, we can't do this, guy. We can't keep doing this. This has obviously happened to you in the past. And then Curtis's whole like, kind of secondary storyline with his girlfriend and falling in love with her and like wanting to do things differently in his life, and Jerry kind of being the like propulsion for that, I think is a really interesting kind of mesh that they have together. So yeah, I felt bad for Jerry. It was a tough beat. Tyler, anything to add for this scene here?
Yeah, I think you put it perfectly. I just think this is something that I feel like there's probably a lot of like couples out there that could probably relate to this scene. Unfortunately, I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that have had an ex come over that like tries to steal from them, and I'm sure like gambling addiction isn't a true addiction, and I think the scene had a great parallel to a lot of other instances with drug addiction where maybe parents finally are on their last straw and like, I'm kicking the kid out of the house, like I've given them 10 tries to get sober and they just can't. Then they finally let him back in once again. It seems like, okay, maybe they're different, and then boom, you catch them in the act and you're just sorrowful, regretful, and you're just like, yeah, this person's just never going to change. And I feel like that's kind of what happened here. And the way that immediately he's like you said, kind of like, oh, I didn't take anything, and he's like, I was just going to pay you back. Like he didn't really even understand the weight of what he was doing or taken away from him. Whereas just a huge violation of trust, and just kind of shows that he's just still in such a sick mental place.
I love the little detail later when he's recounting it for Curtis, and he's like, yeah, it's in her purple sock. Like that was the same sock from when we were married. It's like, oh shit, man, like you've done this before, like even when you were still married, and that's fucked. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That like that's how bad it was. And I mean, presumably was what led to their divorce, but it's just like that little detail again, it's like I feel like there's so many lines and things in here that like tell a whole narrative story just with like one line of dialogue. It's like, oh shit, yeah, like he knew exactly where it was, and just like the fact that it's the same one from when they're married, and like it was a powerful scene for sure.
Definitely. The bathroom beatdown. This is the next one on the list here. Jerry just gets his ass handed to him in the bathroom, and Curtis goes in to help eventually, but Curtis lines this up. And I think this is a really interesting scene to dissect for a second here, because these guys, these hooligans, just walk in and immediately start causing problems. Curtis and Jerry have just basically had their little tiff of like, Jerry lost it, and this is the first time that Curtis is hearing about it, lost all this money. And so naturally, Curtis tries to find a way to get back at Jerry, and it just so happens that like it lines up well. The knee in the in the back of the calf while someone's peeing in the urinal, I wouldn't wish that on like my worst enemy. That sounds terrible. I wouldn't want that to happen to me. And if it did, I'd probably be close to throwing some fists. Like that sounds bad. And then Curtis like listens to it happen. I thought this was a really pivotal scene for their relationship, and like where they're at with each other and how much they're willing to put up with each other, and really how big of degenerates both of them are. Like they are just the lowest of the low to go through a situation like this. I do love a good bathroom beatdown scene. Shout out Mission Impossible. Not as good, but pretty good. It's up there. Bathroom scenes. I know that was a big discourse on Twitter a few weeks ago, so I'm a little late to the conversation. Ben, anything with the bathroom scene? Has that ever happened to you in the bathroom? You've been kneed in the calf, the urinal?
Dude, I mean, I'm with you, like watching that happen, and just like how smoothly he does it. He just like lifts up his knee, just like pushes the guy in. So I was like, oh fuck, man, that would like, what do you do in that situation? Like you're literally caught with your dick in your hands, you know what I mean? You're just like, I don't know what to do right now. Yeah, it's insane. But
do you finish, or do you zip up? Are you like immediate retribution? Or are you like, we gotta take care of the business first?
I mean, we're gonna get a little TMI here, but I've got stage fright, so I would have been in the stall anyway. So this would not have happened to me.
You'd be safe.
So I would just be sitting there like, man, something crazy is going on out there. I'm just gonna stay here for a while. Like this is crazy. I imagine your body, your adrenaline takes over, and you can hold off finishing for a bit. But yeah, it's a cool scene. Great to see him just like sitting outside there, just like, all right, he's had enough now. I'll go in and help. But just like, yeah, we're even now, or however, he wants to phrase it.
Yeah, definitely. Tyler, has this happened to you?
Has not happened to me. I can't say I've ever been beaten up, anything like that, or really ever at all. So thankfully, but yeah, I feel like a big thing here is that this is at the point where they're just starting to win so much, and things are starting to start rolling a bit. And I feel like they just need to feel mortal. I feel like everyone who actually sports bets in real life, or bets on anything in real life, most 99.9% of the time you might get a couple wins, then you have a loss, and that gives you a reality check. You're like, okay, I'm not some genius who knows something that no one else knows. You kind of lose it. You start losing money. You're like, okay, you know what? Reality check set in. But for them, when they just keep winning, they need something to feel mortal. And especially we see that a lot with Curtis, where he's seeking out, the basketball court, bathroom scenes, pretty much all the time. He's just looking for a way to get beat up because he's winning all the time. He needs to feel like he's a human and not some god. And towards the end of the movie, I don't know the exact quote, but Curtis makes a quote to Jerry about like heroes. Like he starts talking about like kind of superhero type shit. So it's like, I think it's like huge that they're just trying to feel mortal, and they use getting verbally assaulted, or not verbally assaulted, physically assaulted, as a way to feel like they aren't just these gods that can't be touched.
Yeah, definitely. Next on the list, loses the bet at the horse race. Jerry loses, Curtis cleans up. I loved this. Like I said, this is my first time watching this, and I thought the twist, like quote unquote, was really good, really unexpected, to be honest. So Curtis ends up going along with, Toto's revenge, which Curtis knew from the beginning. Ben, you were always going to lose. Sorry. It's not a good racehorse name. So he ends up betting it all on Mississippi Grind to win, and Mississippi Grind does win. So he ends up winning $5,000, but he doesn't tell that to Jerry. He gives Jerry $100. He says, "I kept $100. Here's $100. Go get a bus ticket. Get out of here. Like, you got to start over your life." And Jerry's walk after he's handed the $100, the way he walks down like the stadium stairs, and then like turns to look at Curtis again, and then like drags his suitcase down the other flight of stairs, is so demoralizing. I was like, this guy has not, like, this guy's nothing. He's got nothing going for him. He just lost it all because he just can't see anything else. He has no idea. I mean, you can't fault him for going with that horse name. I get it. And the rainbow when they met and all this type of like good luck charm kind of talk. But I love the subversion of expectations and Curtis winning the money. And even though he wins the money, Tyler, like you said, he's got to feel mortal. He goes on to get punched and lie to a bunch of guys about not having any money on him. And even when you win, they're both in such a similar state of affairs, like mentally and emotionally. They both need to feel something, and they both get beat up. We have this incredible juxtaposition of, like I said, like coming back around to this $25,000 house game, and that's where Jerry just absolutely gets punched and like freaks out. And same thing goes for Curtis. He gets punched and like loses it, and it's a really interesting kind of dichotomy of scenes of they're on two different ends of what is happening to them, but they feel the same thing. Ben, I know this was a rewatch for you, so you knew it was coming. Did it work the same way the second watch?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, one of the lines that I like so much out of this is after they lose, or presumably they both lose, but Jerry's like, "All right, we have $200," and Curtis is like, "No, you have $100 and I have $100.
Yeah.
Like, we do not have $200. Just call it, man. Like, you just got to know when to quit." I really enjoyed that. Kind of just like Curtis, like putting his foot down. It's like, nope, like we're done. We can't do anymore. And then, yeah, like what's the dude's name? Something, is it Roundtree or whatever?
Tony
like,
Roundtree.
Tony. That to me was
Great
the most
gangster name.
fake sounding name though of the whole movie. You know what I mean? I mean, we talk about Curtis. I'm like, that's not his real name, but it's like Tony Roundtree. Like, that's not a real name, is it? That he shows up and it's like he's like in the whatever, like the white pages. Like, do you have an address for that? It's like, all right, man, I guess this guy's real. So, yeah, I mean, great scene, like you said, that almost walk of shame, as he's leaving, it's just hilarious and just like emphasized by that luggage just going down step by step. So an awesome scene.
If you're hosting not illegal, but essentially like under the table $25,000 poker buy-ins in your home, you definitely find a way to not be in the white pages. That's like rule number one. Tony Roundtree, you got to figure your shit out, dude.
Yeah.
You can't be found that easily. Tyler, anything, any thoughts on this scene or collection of scenes?
Yeah, it's just one of those things that at this point Jerry started to feel too immortal, that the whole time Curtis was his golden goose, and he just goes against him, and you're kind of shaking your head. You're like, come on, man. Like, Curtis, he always knows, he's always winning. Why would you not go with the horse he's saying? But I kind of love, like, from Curtis's perspective, this scene, because he's watching Jerry like screaming for his horse, and he's kind of looking at him in disgust, and it feels like it's kind of a moment where he's just like, oh, there's just like such a gross world of gambling where just all these people are just degenerates. But then at the end of the day, he cashes in his ticket and makes all the money. So it's like one of those things that, like, even when you can kind of take a out of body experience look and be like, this is just disgusting what it's turning people into, but it's you're when you win money, it's like, well, this is why I'm doing it, and you get that high again. So even though he sees how disgusting it is, he still cashed the ticket, he still made a ton of money. And as we see, he continues to gamble afterwards. So it didn't really change his mind on things.
Yeah, he's just one of the boys. He's just one of us. Okay, the last thing I have here is kind of the final kind of quote unquote like montage. This is really like the final 10, 12 minutes of the movie here, where Jerry takes I think it's $1, and he puts it in an electronic slot machine actually, and it's called something like Rainbow. And I was freaking out. I was like, this is the fucking moment. My guy's gonna do it, and Rainbow, like the theme is gonna come true. Like it's all gonna come together. And he was right all along and all this stuff. And he loses, and my heart sank. And then he fucking wins on double zeros on roulette. Ben, have you ever seen anybody bet like $100, $99 on double zeros?
No, that's insane. Like that's absurd to do.
What's
that.
the
That's
payout?
crazy.
What's the payout on just double zeros? Do you know?
No, off the top of my head, I know I keep one chip in between the 0 and double zero just as a safety thing, but to put that much money on double zero is just ridiculous.
So he puts all this money on double zeros. He basically kind of comes out on top. This is like his moment. He just gets lucky, essentially. He then kind of cruises his way to a blackjack table and just starts fucking winning, and it's awesome. And he finds Curtis there again, and Curtis comes up, and again we get the bourbon shout out. I love the flick of the $100 chip over to Curtis, and then when Curtis wins, he flips it back to him, which I thought was really neat. No words exchanged. They don't need to. They both know they both need that. They both need to be connected by that moment. And then they move on to craps, and he bets it all. And I didn't know what to expect, because like my expectations were subverted so many times in the movie before of like, we're not really winning big. We're not really like losing big. Like our life is never really at risk. Like we're kind of just zoning around like this is just shitty. And so I was like, wow, he's going to lose it all, and he's going to realize like he should have just walked away, right? And like that's the end. We're going to have a very Uncut Gems ending where it's just like he got what he deserved. He ends up winning. I was initially turned off, and I was like, oh no. But then we get the dinner scene with the lobster, and he says the steak doesn't taste right, and he orders a cheeseburger. He goes back and buys his car, and he turns off the poker CD, and we can assume things are looking up for our guy. Love the steak and cheeseburger bit. That's the part that brought me back, and I was like, he's just a man. He's just one of the boys. He just needs to be normal and to be pulled out of this kind of trance. Tyler, favorite part out of kind of all of this ending? How did that work for you?
My favorite part for sure was them winning in craps, winning that $570,000 pot to split between the two, because every gambling movie ever is kind of get a little formulaic. Obviously not Uncut Gems, that subverts expectations, but that's what makes this so great, is that you're expecting them to finally win all this money, bet it all on that final roll, and hit a 7 and kind of bust for craps and lose all their money. But it doesn't do that. And what I love is I feel like I kind of have a more morbid take on the ending. I do think that there is a world where Ben Mendelsohn's character Jerry goes back to his family. He's done with the gambling world and everything's okay. Part of me feels like that rush might still be there. And the thing is, when you watch a gambling movie and you see the big loss at the end, you kind of get a moment of relief. You're like, oh man, that's scary. I would never want to do that. But when you see a win like this, that kind of is what's almost more scary about gambling, because you're like, oh, that could be me one day. Like I just need one more parlay. I need one more like night at the casino, and this could be me making life-changing money. And then I'm done. Then I'm out. Everything's perfect. I won't need to do any more. Once I win that big jackpot, then game's over. I'm done with the gambling. And that's why I kind of really like this ending, because it almost took a more, to me, it was almost just a more scary ending, because the fact that they did win big, but I don't think like it kind of tells you like, look, like Jerry's getting his life together. Curtis is kind of going to go sail off into the sunset literally and likely leave this life all behind. But I don't know. Part of me thinks that once you get that rush, that adrenaline level, that crazy feeling of winning that much money, you're just going to keep looking for bigger and better things to do. And I just don't know, because gambling addiction is a true illness and addiction, just like any other addiction. I don't think just one big win is going to just cure you. Your mental state's immediately back to normal. You're not frazzled up top anymore. So I kind of think that the fact that they won this at the end was almost like just going to kind of, I don't know. I feel like if there's a Mississippi Grind 2, he's back owing people more money this time, and he's down in an even bigger hole, and he's really rough, and Ryan Reynolds in a similar situation. So yeah, I don't know. It's just tough, because you want to be happy and get some relief from the ending, which it does provide you from And you can interpret it that way for sure, which I think is the most common interpretation. But part of me is kind of like, man, like, is this just going to further fuel the addiction and just make things even bigger scale this time when he falls next time? So I
Mhm.
really love the ending because it makes you think about it even more so than he loses everything. You're like, oh shit, he's gonna go get beat up or get some fingers cut off, but then they're kind of gonna forget the debts and he's probably just gonna go back to working as a lowly real estate agent, just live a mundane existence for the rest of his life. I kind of like that they gave him the big win because it makes you think a lot more about what does happen after these credits roll.
Mhm. That's why it's got to be called Mississippi Grind 2, The Hunt, because our boy Jerry's on the hunt for another
Yeah.
big win, man. It works on so many levels.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ending worked out really well. It is a movie though where, I mean, it'd be cheap in probably some other movies, but I wouldn't have hated a cut to black after that last throw, like before we find out if they win or
Oh.
lose. You know what I mean? Because like it kind of doesn't matter. Like these guys, like if they win, great, that's awesome. But if they lose, like we've seen them lose over and over again, and they'll just like, cool, what's the next thing? Like, let's keep
Right.
going. And I think that kind of be fun to leave up to the audience's interpretation, but they do some good stuff with it where, we see Jerry just like hunched over the safe, looking at all the money. And then, we cut to Curtis waking up. It's like, oh, fuck, did Jerry take all of that?
That's what I
Like, it's
thought. I thought he
like,
was going to steal it all.
yeah, so that was good. And then like we see the note in there where it's just like, it's Machu Picchu time. It's like, all right, cool. So maybe
So
he
good.
is like back on track here. Because before that, I mean, that scene before is when Kurt's like, okay, if we win, like, what are you gonna do? You pay back your debts, you do all that kind of stuff. What are you gonna do? He's like, oh, I'm gonna do something for my daughter. It's like,
Mhm.
cool. Maybe that's what he's focusing on now. It's just like, I'm gonna take care of all my debts. I'm gonna go back and like right all my wrongs. And I'm just gonna spend some time with like my kid. And like that's like the hopeful ending here. But yeah, I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't have hated just like a cut to black after that last throw. It's like I don't care if they won or lost. Like they said, it's the destination is the journey kind of thing. So it's like, cool, let's just like, yeah, leave it up.
Do we think that Curtis actually goes to Peru? Because he mentions it earlier in the movie, and he's like, one day, like one day it'll happen, and then he says that he's going to Peru, and he invites that like hotel employee, and he seems pretty serious. But Tyler, to your point, like I just don't think there's any way he actually goes to Peru. I think like he thinks he's going to go to Peru, but then he'll just end up sticking around another city, another casino, and trying to win something else,
Yeah, I mean, again, like he's gonna need something to make him feel mortal. So
Yeah.
he's I don't think he's the type of guy who's gonna quietly ride off into the sunset and be satisfied with the life of luxury, living off the money he made and having no troubles. I think he's gonna figure out a way to make troubles, whether that's getting back into gambling or drugs or ruining his relationships or something like that. I just think some way he's gonna mess it up. One thing, kind of just on a tangent here, which I don't necessarily think this is the interpretation that I'm going with, but I was surprised when I was researching like people's takeaways and analysis of the movie that no one mentioned it once. Is I don't know, like the second time I watched this, I got like Fight Club vibes, and I'm surprised like no one threw out the
Oh,
idea of like Curtis not even being real, and like because
Yeah.
he is just such an
fuck.
unreal figure. Like he always wins, like he never loses. He kind of just randomly appears and randomly disappears. Like I think like the Fight Club thing can kind of be cheap sometimes, and I'm not saying that's my interpretation of the movie, but I was just shocked that I didn't see at least like one person on like some random Reddit forum throw out like, hey, maybe like Curtis wasn't even real. Because I think like I could definitely buy into someone's interpretation of that if they wanted to make the case that Curtis was never even real or never even a real person.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just interesting because
Wow.
he is just such a mysterious guy who's just seems to have some unreal life where he literally never lost. Like I don't think I remember a single time where Curtis lost anything in this whole movie, which is just obviously absurd. So,
Mhm.
Yeah.
but yeah, I think if he is real, I don't think he's going to be satisfied for long.
Well, and I think too, like that whole idea that they're grounded and like their relationship is founded on like something that's like a little mythical and like a little like outside of reality, like this incredible rainbow and like this idea of magic and like all of these themes kind of keep reoccurring and popping up. So, I mean, let it be known, you said it here first. You're gonna start the Mississippi Grind Renaissance here with the Fight Club 2.0. Ben, any thoughts to add, or do you want to do your true cinema moment?
Yeah, so let's get into true cinema. Mine is just like it, it's the scene after Mendelsohn loses to the woman who flops the queen.
Oh yeah.
when he has ace jack and it looks like he's gonna win, and then she gets the queen, and like his laugh in the car afterwards, like, you'll be fucking kidding me. You know what I mean? Like, he's just like, I can't believe I lost it. He's trying to buy back in. People are like, we're done, man. Like, let's call it whatever. But what I like about this is the scene right afterwards when he goes to Reynolds. He's like, oh yeah, I won, like I got it. And he's like, listen, man, I always said that if if a queen came up, I'd go back to my queen. Like, and he just like tells this whole story, and Reynolds like, all right, cool, man. Like let's do it. And it's like, you didn't get the queen fucking busted you, man, but like the way this is, I think, just like showing off the addiction and how serious it is, where it's just like, I'll lie to anyone I can to help like get what I need here. And I'll even like, even if it's kind of the truth, I'm really going to stretch it to make it like in my advantage here. And I really like that scene. It's not like a great scene necessarily. It's not as like super memorable, but I just really enjoyed it in the context of the movie here. It's like, oh, like Jerry's willing to do anything, like to lie to Curtis. Like, I really just want to go see my ex-wife again, see if I can right these wrongs. Where it's just like, she has a purple sock with money in it in her drawer, and I need to go get to that money. Like, that's what's going on here. But he's willing to like, oh, if I said if a queen ever came up, that there would be a sign. It's like, man, you make this sound so like romantic and charming and shit, and really you're just a scumbag who just wants to go get in her sock drawer. But like, it's like that's what happens when you're that bad, and you don't have anything. So that's probably mine, just because I think it kind of ties in like the whole theme of like just how bad this addiction is for Jerry.
Yeah. Tyler, do you what is going to be your true cinema moment? You can pick anything that we talked about, or you go off script. Ben goes off script all the time, as just noted right now.
Yeah, I think it's one that you kind of mentioned, was the final after they win big and they're eating dinner, and how they're eating them pretty much probably the most luxurious dinner you could have in the state, but he's just like, this just tastes wrong. This isn't right. This isn't me. I need just a burger. Just get this steak out of here. And Curtis is like, no, this steak is great. This lobster is great, because obviously he's accustomed to winning. He loves the winning life. Like, he doesn't know anything other than winning. So to him, the luxurious food tastes just right, tastes perfect. But Jerry, like, he's a loser. Like, he's been losing this whole movie. He finally won big, but it doesn't quickly change. Like we said, like, this big win might not quickly change his brain chemistry to make him a non-degenerate gambler. Same token, like, just because he won big doesn't mean all of a sudden he's some suave, rich hotshot like Curtis seemingly is, where he's kind of smooth and sophisticated. It's not the life for him, and I feel like just the subtle way of him rejecting a meal, where it's one of those where, like, whenever you see food on a screen, it looks so good, and I'm just like watching, like, how are you like sending this back? This looks like an absolutely delightful dinner, and he just keeps being that pestering, annoying person that, like, if you're sitting at dinner with them, I'm kind of like cringing. I'm like, oh man, like, your food's fine. Please don't make a scene over this. So yeah, I just really love that moment. I think it really tied in a lot of the themes of the movie really well in just one subtle way.
You mentioned making a scene. Really hard to watch Jerry freak out when they weren't comped a room at the first place that they went. That was like curling my toes. I was like, oh, Jerry, you're in it bad, brother. This is tough. I mentioned mine earlier, but it is when he loses at the horse race. Mississippi Grind wins. I think that's a great, like, obviously little nod, and just that absolutely beat down, depressed walk away from Curtis with the rolly suitcase that he just like doesn't care about really is really hard to watch, and is really a great kind of synopsis of like nothing's changed in the at that moment in like the 120 minutes or like the 80 minutes or whatever that we've seen so far. So I really enjoy that. Okay, let's do our A1 acts. We're gonna start with Ben Mendelsohn. Of course, I don't think we've done Ben Mendelsohn on this show. I'd love to see him in a more modern day A24 movie. I think he would be something really, really interesting. Here's what I've got listed for Ben. Mississippi Grind, of course. Animal Kingdom, Killer Elite, Killing Them Softly, The Dark Knight Rises, The Place Beyond the Pines, Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, Darkest Hour, Ready Player One as Sorrento, which is just like, I know we kind of mentioned in the beginning, like that real cookie cutter villain, but I am a Ready Player One apologist, and I actually really like him in that movie. Captain Marvel, he's Talos in the MCU. I believe he's in Secret Invasion. I believe he's in some other things as well. The King, and then Cyrano. So that is what I put on the list for Ben Mendelsohn. Tyler, what's your A1 act for Ben Mendelsohn?
Am I allowed to go off script?
Absolutely, man.
Bloodline season 1. TV show, Netflix original. He season one is like the best acting I've ever seen from him. Kyle Chandler's the main actor in it, who is like the main coach in the Friday Night Lights TV show.
Yeah.
He was in Game Night as the Suave
Coach
brother.
Taylor. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. I think that's like the best performance I've ever seen from him. Is just Bloodline season one. He plays like that villain role, but it was when he was a lot less established in his career, and he's like plays the role of just someone you just want to punch, and just that ruins things so well. But in terms of stuff you have listed here, I'd say probably my favorite might be Mississippi Grind, but since we talked about it so much, I'll give a shout out to Rogue One, because while I do think in Captain Marvel and Ready Player One, he plays just very cookie cutter roles. He does them well, but they're cookie cutter. I feel like in Rogue One, he's cookie cutter as well, but I really enjoy him in that one. And maybe it's just because I'm a Rogue One apologist. It's my favorite Star Wars movie, so I really like him in that one.
Director Krennic is sick, honestly. Pretty cool. Ben, what do you got?
Animal fucking Kingdom, man.
I knew it. I knew you were gonna go.
That movie, I will. I love Animal Kingdom so much. And Ben Mendelsohn is so good in this movie. I mean, it's a movie filled with like some great actors and some great acting. I mean, you have Guy Pearce is in it, Joel Edgerton, Jackie Weaver, like some really good people in here. But Ben Mendelsohn is fucking creepy as shit, and he is so good in this. So I'll shout out that movie anytime I get the chance to. Also directed by a guy named David Michaud, who has an A24 movie coming out supposedly later this year called Wizard. So maybe I'll make you watch Animal Kingdom before we watch that. Who knows?
I was going to say, I know you've told me to watch Animal Kingdom in the past, and I haven't yet. So our Patreon, we just covered Upgrade, which is a movie you tried to get me to watch for a very long time. And I finally did, and I was not disappointed in the slightest. So
nice.
I need to learn from my own lessons and watch these movies a lot faster. Of course, The Place Beyond the Pines. I love that movie. If not primarily for Ryan Gosling, that vibe, that look is everything I aspire to be in my life. I hope to be a better father, but of course, he looks great in that movie. Ben Mendelsohn's in that movie, and he's good. But I will stand up for Ready Player One here. I think he's exceptionally cookie cutter and really a pretty poor script, like when it comes to his role. But he yells a lot in that movie, and I think he's very good at yelling. And he plays like that movie just calls for a cookie cutter villain, and I think it's great. I think he's very, very good in that movie. And you know, the good guys win, and he gets taken off to jail, and big win for Ben Mendelsohn in that movie. Okay, Ryan Reynolds. This is interesting. This'll reveal some stuff here. So Mississippi Grind, National Lampoon's Van Wilder, Waiting, Just Friends, Smokin' Aces, Definitely Maybe, Adventureland, The Proposal. A movie I do enjoy, actually. The Proposal. I watched that in the hospital both times my children were born, because back when they were born, you could have DVDs. Like you would ask, like, hey, can I have the flat book of all the DVDs to put in the TV? And we always watch The Proposal for some reason, which incredible pick. Green Lantern, The Croods, Deadpool 1, Deadpool 2, The Hitman's Bodyguard, Hugh Jackman's birthday message. I don't know what that is, but it's on his IMDb, which I thought was at least worthy of bringing up, that his IMDb is just as deep as a fucking cavern. It's unbelievable. Let's see. Pokemon Detective Pikachu, Six Underground, Free Guy, Red Notice, The Atom Project, Spirited, and Ghosted. He also has 10 upcoming projects, and I don't even know how that's like humanly possible. I don't understand. This guy's just getting the bag everywhere. It's a lot of sequels. Obviously Deadpool 3, a lot of things that are based on prior IP. But hey, kudos to him, I guess. If he's in 10 more movies at some point in time, good for him. Ben, what's your Ryan Reynolds?
I'm going to go with, I think what my first exposure was to Ryan Reynolds, that's Waiting. Anyone that's worked in the service industry can relate to that movie. There's a ton of funny stuff in it. I didn't work in like the food industry, but I did work out at the airport for 15 years, and it's crazy how many similarities there are to just horrible customers. So if you've ever had to deal with customers, I think you would enjoy Waiting. It's a really good movie and really early Ryan Reynolds, super funny. So that's what I would go with.
What about you, Tyler?
Honestly, I think I'm gonna have to go Mississippi Grind. I feel like there's two distinct phases of Ryan Reynolds' career. There's the rom-com era and then the Ryan Reynolds era as we know it, in terms of him being over the top Ryan Reynolds. And I feel like one of the only movies I should say in his career that doesn't really fit either of those two molds is Mississippi Grind. It came, 2015 was it released? Maybe earlier.
Yeah, 2015.
Yeah, 2015. Came at a time where it's just kind of weird transient state for him. Like I feel like now we're used to him being in everything like Netflix produces, like Red Notice, Six Underground, The Adam Project, like everything is just Ryan Reynolds, Ryan Reynolds, Ryan Reynolds. It wasn't the case in 2015. We'd seen him in blockbusters prior to then, but I feel like this just really sticks out as just like a raw, true performance. And I'd be really interested to hear from him, like if he where he holds this in his filmography, because it is a kind of like a forgotten film for most people. Like a lot of Ryan Reynolds super fans probably don't even know this movie exists because it's not, a boilerplate movie for him. So I wonder if he's the same way, where he, kind of just this movie is something he doesn't really think about, or if maybe he does treasure his performance being a little more down to earth and grounded as opposed to the Hugh Jackman free guy levels. But if I had to go like a wonky Ryan Reynolds performance, I'd probably go Deadpool. I actually prefer Deadpool 2 like slightly to Deadpool 1, but I think those are the most natural fitting for him when he's like Ryan Reynolds at a 12 out of 10.
Yeah. Look, it's not Spirited and it's not Ghosted and it's not the Adam Project. It's not any Netflix project that he's done. Chris Evans, like shout out Chris Evans, really took a page out of the Ryan Reynolds playbook here and is just like, let me be in every single Netflix project ever and just make a bag. So I guess good for those guys. It's actually going to be Mississippi Grind for me as well, Tyler. Like you literally said it. It's just a special Ryan Reynolds performance where he's not quite as like Ryan Reynolds as we know him today, and he's not quite like on that level. And I think it gives him some interesting material to work with. Whenever these strikes are over, and if I have the chance to interview Ryan Reynolds, I think if any of us have the chance to talk to Ryan Reynolds, we should make a pact now that our first question will be, how do you feel about Mississippi Grind? And when's Mississippi Grind 2 The Hunt coming? Because we need you back. And was it a Fight Club situation? I'd be really interested to know his thoughts on this movie as well. Absolutely. Last A1 act is gambling movies. Of course, this is a gambling movie. It literally just revolves completely around that. Mississippi Grind, Casino, 21, The Card Counter, Molly's Game, Rounders, Let It Ride, Ocean's 11, The Hustler, Atlantic City, The Color of Money, The Sting, Owning Mahoney, which apparently has Philip Seymour Hoffman in it, I believe. I was reading. Sounds actually very interesting. The Cincinnati Kid, Hard 8, Uncut Gems, of course. The Gambler, California Split, and I put Casino Royale on here. It's a spy thriller, but it's a pretty elite casino scene, if you ask me. Ben, favorite gambling movie?
I want to shout out one that's not on here. That was like my first gambling movie, which is White Man Can't Jump. That's like a really good movie. I mean, it's not like a really good movie, but it's a good movie. And just a lot of things that are going to stick with me for the rest of my life from that movie. So, love when White Man Can't Jump, but Ocean's 11 is like, for me, it's like, it's not even like gambling, like they're doing any gambling, you know what I mean? Like it's all like the heist behind it, but there are some like really some good scenes in there, and it's like all surrounded by obviously the casinos and gambling. And yeah, Ocean's 11 is just like one of my favorites.
Yeah, there's a pretty good gambling scene in Ocean's 11.
Oh yeah,
that's like very key to the movie.
Yeah.
Tyler, you going on list or you going off script?
Yeah, it's going to be Ocean's 11 for me as well. I mean, it's tough when you're looking at this list. You got, Scorsese with Casino. You got a Paul Schrader with The Card Counter. You have Sam Mendes' Casino Royale. Obviously, Uncut Gems is great. Like, there's so many, like, heavy-hitting directors on here, so it's hard to just go for, like, Ocean's 11, which is obviously an acclaimed movie. And, it's a heist movie, but also, like you mentioned, there's an important gambling scene as well. So most of it taking place, basically all of it in the casino. And that's probably my favorite. That's probably the one, like, if I want instant gratification, instant entertainment of this list, I'd probably turn that one on. If I want an easy watch, 21 is probably the one I would pick. So I guess I'll give those two a shout out. But yeah, I feel like it's just, I mean, yeah, I'm acknowledging there's a Scorsese on here. I'm acknowledging Paul Schrader's on here.
Yeah.
But just, probably Ocean's 11 for me.
Yeah. I mean, there's some really good stuff. Obviously, PTA with Hard 8 is also on this list. Yeah, I think there's some really good ones. Uncut Gems aside, obviously, I love Casino. I've only seen it once, but it is definitely like, I'm going to sit down and engage and watch Casino. It is not not even like a Mississippi Grind kind of a level of movie. I'm personally going to go with 21 because I grew up watching that movie just constantly. Like you said, Tyler, like I feel like it was just on TNT like all the time. And I haven't seen it in probably a decade. And there are scenes that are just grilled into my mind. Like I know the opening bike ride across the bridge into the campus, and he works at the tailor shop on his college campus. And that's when he first does math. And like, that was what got me really intrigued about like counting cards and casinos and gambling and all that stuff from a pretty young age. So yeah, 21, really special place in my life. Okay, let's rank this movie and let's get out of here. We have our A24 ranking, A through F. You can throw a plus, you can throw a minus in there. I'm curious, Tyler, where this falls kind of in your A24 ranking, master list.
Yeah, for me, I guess a ranking here would be like a B plus, B24 plus. I rate things on a scale of 0 to 10. I give this like an 8.6 out of 10, which is a 4.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd. So if I was doing no pluses or minus, I feel like A24 would make more sense than B24, but I'll give it a B plus 24. It's not my favorite A24 movie of all time, but it is quite highly up there. And obviously this is one of the more like underground A24 films in terms of like most people, like pretty much almost everyone actually on Film Talk that I see like their A24 ranked lists don't have this movie on there. I feel like this isn't one that's highly watched. Yeah. So definitely in my rankings is way higher than most people. It makes the top 10, but not the top 5. But also I haven't seen all the A24 movies. I've seen a very good chunk, but not all of them. But I rank it very highly. I give it a B plus 24.
Yeah, I'm with you actually. B24 plus. That's what I would go with as well here. I feel like it just misses the cutoff of being an A because I don't have a huge desire to rewatch it. Like I really enjoy it. I would recommend it to anybody. I think we get some great performances here. Like I said, I was excited to rewatch it, but it's been like, I don't know how long since I've seen it. You know what I mean? Like probably close to a decade. Or I mean, I guess not that long. 'Cause it's only been out for 8 years, but I mean, I saw it when it came out, you know what I mean? So it's been a while, but I was excited to rewatch it, but now I'm like, I could go another 8 years, I think, before I have to see it again. So B plus 24, it's a recommend for, anybody that asks about it. It would be high on the overall A24 list, but it's not something like, an Uncut Gems or Everything Ever or whatever that I'm like, oh yeah, I want to rewatch that again right now, so that's what I'm going with.
You beautiful losers. I also wanted to go with a B plus 24. Right. So look at that. We did it again. I think the last time we had a guest on the pod a couple of weeks ago, we also all chose the same ranking for the Florida Project, I believe. So yeah, gosh, good luck with Tyler. You're a good luck charm. How incredible. We've done it again. Yeah, B plus 24. I think it's a great movie. I think it is incredibly underrated, especially for A24. And what I think is so fascinating, especially with the current state of A24, is like, people just don't think this is an A24 movie. And I think that just does go kind of show the breadth of the studio and the production company. Tyler, thanks so much for coming on the pod, man. This was incredible. Thanks for joining us for a conversation of Mississippi Grind. If people want to find more of you, where is the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, thank you all for having me. This is a blast. I'm a big fan of the movie, so it's great to talk about it and, really dive deeply into it. So it was a great time. Thank you for having me. Whatever your platform of choice is, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, I'm at Tyler C. Whitmore. You can find me over there, or at Reeltok Podcast is the podcast that I host. I'm on every social media, so whatever one's your fancy, you can find me over there.
Love
Absolutely.
it.
Highly recommend to follow. Always good content. Next week on the pod, we are attempting to collaboratively rank movies again. The last time we did this was Christopher Nolan, and Ben stabbed me in the fucking heart. So I don't feel great about what's coming in the future, especially since it is a hot topic, like a hot button topic with musicals. We're going to be trying to rank the 11 best musicals of all time. We're doing this in preparation for Dix the Musical, which is A24's very first adult musical, which is going to be fantastic. We are going to be having a guest joining us, Sophie Holsinger of the Film Talk community. Tyler, I know you know Sophie as well, very prominent on Twitter as well. She's going to be joining us, her very first podcast appearance, so I'm really glad that we can snatch her and throw her into the fucking fire with a collaborative rankings that is going to get wild. 3 people, we'll see what happens. Ben, I just watched Moulin Rouge the other night, man. Things are going to get out of control.
Yeah, I'm dreading it already, but I don't know if I'd rather you pick Moulin Rouge or Oppenheimer. If you can somehow get that on the list, like I'm just anticipating that. So we'll see how it all plays out. This is going to be a lot of fun for sure. Yeah, looking forward to that episode. Guys, let us know what you thought about Mississippi Grind. We're on Twitter and Instagram at 24 minutes of A24. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube. You can see all three of our beautiful faces as we talk about this movie. And if you're interested, we have a Patreon. If you want to support us there, where we talk about 24 minutes of not A24 movies, and it's actually 24-minute episodes, unlike this one, which is going like for an hour and 24 minutes. So yeah, you can find us over there on Patreon as well if you're interested in that. So thanks everyone for your support. I am Ben Lawhorn.
And I'm Ethan Simi. Spring break forever, bitches.